Hello and welcome to the Saltcast. My name is Ryan Johnson, and today we are graced with Jason Pars and Paul Johnson's presence. Good morning, guys.
Morning, Ryan.
Hey Ryan, great to be here.
Morning, Paul.
Good morning. Good morning.
I always love to hear a little bit from each one of you guys. Um,
Yeah.
but today, I thought, we talk a lot about getting compliant. With Wayfair, everybody's charging sales tax. Everybody needs to at least probably get registered in at least one more state. And it's things we've talked about. Um, but getting compliant in each state can be pretty straightforward in its own complex way. But some states, make it's even a little more complex, and there's some things that you should consider when it comes to tax rate and other things. So I was hoping you guys could you know stimulate our minds with some things that people need to consider when registering in some of these states.
Oh, I love the word stimulating. Let me stimulate your mind with some talk on sales tax compliance. That's pretty good. Um, I'm almost never going to talk about sales tax without talking about the three questions. So, three questions that you should answer. Do I have Nexus? Is what I sell taxable? And is the way I sell it make me the responsible party for collecting it? So let's just say that you've learned that that's a yes, right? I have Nexus in a particular state. What I sell is taxable in that state, and I sell it through my own channels. I don't sell it on a marketplace platform who might be responsible for collecting that tax. So I'm fully responsible for ensuring that I collect and remit tax on my sales in that state because I've answered those three questions affirmatively. So then you think, okay, well, what do I do next? And just as a caveat, that's why we call it a what's next call, because we just want to help you gain confidence in next steps and help you understand what you should do. Okay, so you've answered those three questions affirmatively. You need to register, but now I need to make sure that I'm properly and accurately collecting tax at the right rate on the right items. And then I have obviously the administrative hassle, as I'll call it, to populate the forms and get those returns into the state with payment. So you would think, all right, just give me a list of rates and I'll collect the rate and we're good. But it unfortunately, when governments are involved, it's not always that simple. There are some fairly simple states, right? If I'm registered in New Jersey and I can determine one rate that I apply to all of my taxable sales, so if I can figure out what's taxable that I sell and at what rate, which is a flat rate, then it's pretty good. And the form is pretty simple. You just really put top level dollars on there, apply the tax rate, remit the tax. I don't have to worry about if I have a location in New Jersey and if I'm supposed to collect what jurisdiction I'm supposed to collect from. I just collect that rate on my sales and it's pretty good. Massachusetts, pretty similar. But as Paul may share with us today, some states just not that simple. The one state that stands out to me is Illinois. Um, you have some difficulties there because the city of Chicago administers some of its own taxes separately from the state of Illinois. But if you look at the state of Illinois, it's always been somewhat simple. If you're registered and have a location in Illinois, you collect tax from the state and the separate local rates based on the destination of your sale in that state. So yeah, I need to know more rates because there's a state rate and then there's local rates. It's all collected at the state level, but I need to know what rate is collected by the various locations where I sell goods. It's been even easier if you're an out-of-state seller with the responsibility to collect tax in Illinois because they only require you to collect the state rate, which is their use tax rate. So if I'm in Illinois, I collect sales tax, and there was a way to do that. And if I was outside of Illinois and collecting tax on my sales, then I collected the use tax rate, which was just the state rate. But now, if I'm in Illinois and I make a sale to Illinois from Illinois, then I collect the local rate. And if I sell from outside of the state um, into the state, I still now collect the use tax rate, just the state level rate of 625. But if I'm an e-commerce seller who has gained nexus in the state of Illinois, I'm not located in Illinois. I don't sell from locations within Illinois. All of my sales come from outside through e-commerce. I now have to collect the state and local rate at the sales tax level, and so I need to have a system for that. So it's not overly complicated for the out-of-state seller, except now they have to know a lot more rates, and they have to be able to accurately impose those based on the destination of their sale. But it's quite a bit more complicated for an actual Illinois retailer because I'm selling goods within Illinois and I collect the state plus local rate. But if I have sales that are coming from a store or from an e-commerce channel or some other way outside of the state into Illinois, I can collect the lower state rate. Maybe it gives me advantage on being able to collect a lower tax rate, but it adds a significant amount of complexity under audit and in the process of compliance to be able to remit that tax. And so if I've made it sound muddy and you don't understand what I just discussed, now you know what every seller who has Nexus in Illinois is dealing with because they've got to be able to figure this out and get it straight. Because under audit, they might be responsible for paying out of pocket, or they might be over collecting from their customer base, which can have other consequences or implications as well. So that's just one state that's difficult. Paul, maybe you know a state or two that has similar changes since Wayfair came on board.
Oh yeah, no, Wayfair really shook the sales tax world. But from a rate perspective, you have, I mean, it varies state by state. Not everybody is as simple as a Massachusetts or an Indiana, where the sales tax rate is flat 6% or 6.25% across the board, and the use tax rate is the same rate, 6% or 6.25. Missouri is probably top of my list, or Arizona, just as far as complexities go, because you have the state rate, which is flat, and everybody knows that, but then all the local rates in these states will vary, as well as the use tax rates will vary. And so it just becomes a real mess if you're in certain states doing business physically located there or selling into the state. We also have clients who are giving away promotional items into those states and trying to figure out what amount of tax do I owe on this item that I'm giving away, or what amount of tax do I owe on this purchase that I made. Texas tops the list. Comes to the top of my list just recently because they made a change late last year that changed the sourcing. Most people are aware that Texas is origin-based sourcing for in-state sellers, but now they're going to destination-based sourcing for in-state sellers when you're making an online sale. So if you have a location, let's say in Houston, a retail store or whatnot, then you would still origin base. You would collect the tax based on your origin there in Houston. But if you make website or e-commerce sales through your website, now you're required to collect tax based on the customer's location. So this is a little bit of a disadvantage, I think, to businesses because it was, a little bit of an edge. Hey, if you purchase your product from me, I'm located outside the city or the county limits, and I'm only going to charge you 6.25% sales tax. But if you purchase from this other guy, he's going to charge you 8.25. Now, as a consumer, I'm generally not shopping based off of a difference in 2%, but big projects, service projects, or what have you, that could be a big deal, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
So,
So what you're saying in Texas is until late last year, I'm a retail outfit. Maybe I have a retail location in 6 or 7 places in the state of Texas, and I collect tax based on that location, regardless of where I sell, if it comes from that location. And I guess the way e-commerce was handled was you would still charge the tax based on your origin location, even if the item was sold through e-commerce or on a website. But now you could be a single location spot. I mean, your warehouse could be right there in Houston. Your retail outlet could be right there in Houston.
hmm
You've always charged Houston tax. You've never worried about other jurisdictions' tax.
mm-mm,
But now all of those goods coming out of that warehouse through e-commerce to locations in Texas, on those sales specifically, I need to track that I'm picking up
right,
the right local jurisdiction
right,
tax. Wow, yeah.
right,
Yeah, that is not an easy fix
right,
for a retail outlet.
right.
Most people come to us and say, "Can I just charge the highest amount of tax in the
Yeah,
state and just call it my location
yeah,
and not worry about it?"
right.
Well, no. No, you can't just do that. I mean, under scrutiny of audit, there can
Yeah, it could be a
be,
mess.
penalties and other fees associated with that.
And
They want you to be collecting it right.
Texas has been very friendly, just from an audit perspective, when it comes to the collection of the proper amount of tax. Hey, on this transaction, you charged the Houston tax, but you should have charged Austin or Dallas or what have you. And under audit, they would just make the change. The auditor would be able to reallocate that tax that was reported to the improper jurisdiction. But in states like
Oh, you just move the
Illinois,
money. I
right,
mean, all the money's there.
right. But in states like Illinois or Missouri or these other states, it's not that simple. The state is not willing to do all of that, and they impose that upon you to refile and reprocess your returns to properly allocate that tax, and just makes a real headache for the taxpayer. And so when you mention, because we have clients and we've had discussions on these what's next calls, can I just charge the highest rate and then the state gets all of the money? Well, yeah, I mean, the state will get all their money and they'll be happy, but at the end of the day, it may cause more frustration and work on your end from an administrative perspective, um, to deal with that. Now, there are pros and cons to it all. It's better to be conservative and charge a higher rate than it is a lower rate, just to ensure that you don't have some undue tax burden under audit, but it's not necessarily the
Unless your
best
customer
answer,
base, meets an attorney that wants to sue you for being
right?
overcharged in
Right.
some sort of class action lawsuit. I mean, it seems
Yeah.
absurd, but you see
Yeah.
it happen,
Yeah.
so you're wanting to be careful. So
And
this
I
sourcing rule is, oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I know that when Texas made this change late last year, that it was met with some frustration and grievances, and so I understand that it's going to be challenged in court. And that's what Colorado is going through right now. It's what Louisiana is going through right now. You have these court cases that pop up where people are upset. How are you going to require me to charge and collect the local taxes based on the delivery of those products when, I mean, it's just an undue burden on the taxpayer, on the business trying to just turn a profit, and now they have all these sales tax hoops they got to jump through. So it's going to continue to go through the court system, the federal court system, until something uh, is offered that's good for businesses, or that's at least doable. But in this instance, it's a real mess and complication.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's not just, I mean, it's an added complication because now with economic nexus, there are far more taxpayers getting compliant, registering in these states that have some of these nuances that are a little more complicated. And so you have a lot more people collecting tax, and they need to know the best way to do it. But you also have, you mentioned Colorado and Louisiana. In Louisiana, we worked with a retailer This is a good case study to review when it comes to rates. You think you're collecting the right tax based on your customer's location, and the end result is you have the state of Louisiana tax that you collect, and that's fairly simple. In Texas, like you said, under audit, they can move the money around from local jurisdiction to local jurisdiction. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just some work in the background, really. And if it's the same rate, you're in good shape. But in Louisiana, if you collect a parish tax, that's a tax administered by the local county, which are called parishes in Louisiana. If you collect that tax and remit it to that parish for a sale to your customer who resides in that parish, and then another parish comes back and says, hey, where your store location is, that customer that you sold to actually picked it up at your store in this
Hmm.
parish. And so
Hmm.
this parish tax should have been due. So we worked with this retailer who had an audit in one parish where they have a store location, who had six-figure audit assessment based on tax that was due to their parish for customers that actually bought and picked up the items at that location. But they had been collecting tax based on their customer's address in 30 other parishes.
Hmm.
And what's the result of that? Well, can't you just move that around?
An
I
absolute
mean, come
nightmare.
on. It's been collected. Just take the money that was paid to those other parishes and move it over to this parish.
Yeah.
Totally a sourcing issue, right? They think they're doing it right. 3 years later, they get audited. Now all this money is due to one parish. Well, the only way you can get that money back is you have to file a refund claim with those other 30 parishes for the tax that you remitted to those parishes erroneously. And then you got to deal with the process of actually working through those refund claims, working with those parishes, providing the proper understanding of what happened. Because it's simple, right? If I shipped it to them, it was due in your parish, but they picked it up in my store, so it's due in this parish. Oh, well, I mean, we're really going to have to go through that and firm that up and make
Hmm.
sure that
Hmm.
that's correct. And so now you're providing lots of documents, information, etc.
All
Anyway,
your
it's just a
Louisiana
huge
sales and everything.
hassle.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so um, it's something that you've got to figure out on the front end, and there are solutions for it. There are companies who can help with special rules and special transactions because you're having to now break out all of your sales transactions based on um, where they came from, how you're situated, where you're registered. So you're not just dealing with what's the right rate on the right item, but what's the right location and the rate at that location based on the nature of the transaction, where from, where to, and where I'm located and registered. So not simple. So we would just encourage you if you're in this early setup stage or you've run into an audit situation or you've run into some other scenarios, just jump on a call with us and let's chat about your situation and we can give you hopefully some peace of mind. That's our ultimate goal is that you have peace of mind and some confidence on how to manage a situation if it's turned into a situation or how to manage it up front so that you don't run into a hairy situation.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, guys, my brain has been stimulated. I feel like I feel like I just sat down with my kids trying to help them with their Common Core math. Man, there's a lot of complicated stuff going. But yeah, like you said, Jason, we can definitely get on a what's next call with you, run through your situation, and give you some viable solutions going forward. So again, thank you, Jason. Thank you, Paul, for being on with me, and we hope to see you on another one.
Thank you, Ryan.
Take care, Ryan.